Hello guys and welcome back to Shaun's Japanese course. And in this video we're going to talk about the polite or the masu form. Now, the polite form of verbs is actually very important in the Japanese language, okay? You see, when we talked about the basic sentence structure, I mentioned that the verb is the important part of the sentence and that, depending on the form that it takes, the nature of the entire sentence is going to change, right? So, if the verb is in the present tense, the sentence is present, right? If the verb is in the past tense, the sentence is in the past. If the verb is negative, the sentence is negative. Now, if the verb is in the polite form, that means that the entire sentence is polite, okay? And of course, in Japanese language, being polite is very important, just like it is in English, for instance, right? I mean, when you were a kid, your mom did not teach you to say please and thank you for no reason, right? I mean, being polite is important in pretty much every language, right? It's just that in Japanese, we go a little bit differently about it, right? So, how does the polite form of verbs, right, look? Well, for ru verbs, you replace the ru with masu. That's why it's called the masu form, right? Masu. And for u verbs, you replace that u sound, right, with the e sound, right? And you attach masu. So how does that actually look? Well, for ru verbs, taberu becomes tabemasu. Miru becomes mimasu. Deru becomes demasu. Iru becomes imasu. Now, bear in mind that when you pronounce this masu, right, even though it's written out as masu, that u at the end ends up being silent. And the reason behind that is simply that the s stops the flow of the word, right? You see, when the Japanese pronounce, sentences, right, they have this certain flow, right? And every sentence is pretty much pronounced, with that flow. And since this s, this final s at the end, right, stops that flow, u just ends up being silent, right? So it just goes, tabemasu, mas. Now, of course, the s is not clean s because you still, you have that u at the end. It's just that the u is silent, okay? So s is just a little bit smudged, right, over that u, which is silent, right? When we look at u verbs, however, again, as I've said, pretty simple. We have kaku, kakimasu. So u sound is replaced with its e equivalent, right? So kaku, kakimasu. Kau, kaimasu. Hairu, hairimasu. Iru, irimasu. And as you can clearly see, this is the reason why I told you that the masu form will tell you what verb is a ru verb and what verb is an u verb, right? You can clearly see there is a difference between them, right, in the masu form. Now, of course, the reason why I told you to learn the masu form of the verb is simply because the masu form is used a lot, right? And when you listen to the language, right, you're gonna hear verbs used in the masu form and you're gonna be able to remember them purely through experience rather than just, through blind memorization. Now, of course, bear in mind that all of these verbs, right, still mean the same thing, right? It's just that with the polite form, they're more polite, right? The meaning is the same, but it's just more polite way of saying that, right? Of stating that meaning, right? Now, of course, as always, we still have, the irregular verbs, right? The two irregular verbs, kuru and suru, and they are actually the only exceptions when it comes down to the masu form. So kuru becomes kimasu and suru becomes shimasu, and that's basically it, right? So it's very simple, very easy, not really complex at all. However, because I'm talking about the polite form, about the masu form, I actually have to mention something else. And that is, of course, the verb stem. Now, the reason why I'm mentioning the verb stem is because the verb stem is sometimes called the masu stem. And the reason why it's called that is, well, when you build this verb stem, right, for ru verbs, you just remove the ru, right? And for u verbs, you replace the u sound with the e sound, right? So how that actually looks in examples is that, for taberu, we have tabe, right? For kaku, we have kaki. For aru, we have ari. For kuru, we have ki. And for suru, we have shi, right? So, however, you may have noticed that these are actually, the first part of these verbs in the masu form, right? You just attach the masu to these stems and you get the masu form of these verbs, right? Tabemasu, kakimasu, arimasu, kimasu, shimasu. right? And as a result, you can clearly see that that's actually the reason why it's sometimes called the muscle stem, because it's used to form this, to make this muscle form. And that's actually the reason why I'm mentioning it here, right? The verb stem is actually used in other things, right, than the muscle form, right? And that's actually the reason why it's important, okay? It's not important because of the muscle form itself, right? It's important because of those other things, right? You don't really have to worry about it too much right now, right? Just remember that it exists, right? So when I talk about it a bit later, you know what I'm talking about, right? So yeah, that's pretty much it as far as the muscle form goes, right? It's actually, as I said, it's very simple, very easy. It's not really overly complex. And in the next video, we're actually going to see how the muscle form works with those basic verb forms as well. The negative, the past, and the past negative, right? So I hope I'll see you in that one. Bye.